So today we're going to be talking about volume of 3D shapes because that's the only thing you can get volume of. But to start this off, things that we need our area formulas in order to find volume. So just a reminder, the area of a square is that A equals S squared, meaning side squared. A rectangle is A equals, we're going to call it base times height because that's what it is called in geometry in high school. So we're going to go ahead and use that formula instead. A triangle is that the area equals 1/2 base times height, or another way to think of that, that is the same as saying base times height divided by 2. Those are both the same thing. And then a circle, area of a circle is pi r squared. And so these are things, formulas that we would use in order to find volume because we need the area of our base shape. And so these are our main base shapes. So we're going to start, when I started looking at your homework is really about cylinders and cones and spheres. But we're going to go ahead and talk about prisms, just so that you get that introduced before your geometry next year. So the volume formula for a prism is that volume equals the area of the base, which we call capital B, times height. So again, V will stand for volume, which volume is how much something can hold. Capital B is area of base. So that's important, that's area. That's why that last slide where we went over how to find the area of those basic shapes. And when I'm looking at my shape over here, I would have to find the area of this triangle B in order to find the volume. And then lowercase h is the height. And more importantly, this has to be perpendicular. Because we want the perpendicular height from top to bottom. So, how do we use that? So here we have a rectangular prism. So in this one, I just have to choose one of the rectangles to be my base. I am going to choose this lovely rectangle here to be my base. And so I have to find, so remember, V equals area of the base times height. So I need to find the area of the base. So in order to do that, I'm going to take my lowercase b times the height of that rectangle itself. So that is going to be 6 times 2. And so that gives me 12. Now, the height is distance from one base to the other base. So since I'm using this actual side here as a base, I'm going to find the distance to this other base, which is going to be that distance of 5. And so my height for my prism is going to be the 5 centimeters. And so then I'm going to find my volume by taking 12 times 5, which is 60 centimeters cubed. And volume is always in cubic units. Now with a rectangular prism, it's special. We could have chosen any of these rectangles. So I could have chosen the 5 by 6. If I would have chosen the 5 by 6 as my base, then we would have had a B that is 30 centimeters squared, and then our height would have been the distance from the bottom to the top, which is 2, and so then our volume would have been 30 times 2, which is still 60 centimeters cubed. So either base that I would have chosen, or either rectangle I would have chosen as my base, works. Now if we have triangles or circles, then those different shapes have to be our base shape. So then we go into the volume of the cylinder. Well, a cylinder is really just a circular prism. And so when we're talking about the volume of a cylinder, our area of a circle is pi r squared, and then we're going to take it times the perpendicular height of our cylinder. Remember that r is radius, and radius is halfway across our circle. So from the center to any point on the circle itself. And then again, h is that perpendicular height. So that's our formula for the volume of a cylinder. That's the formula you're going to be using today. And so when we look at this example, I know that the cylinder is not perpendicular itself. It's what we call oblique. It's been slanted, but I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm going to, volume will be pi r squared times our height, where we know that the radius, in looking, my radius is 4, and my height is 7. And so I'm just going to plug in. Volume will equal pi times 4 squared times 7. So then I'm going to work with the numbers. So 4 squared is 16. And I'm going to take 16 times 7. And so right now I have 112 pi. Now, in your Math Excel work, it's going to talk about exact answers, and or it'll tell you to use pi as 3.14. Now, when it talks about an exact answer, this is an exact answer. Because remember, pi is a never-ending number. So when we want an exact answer, we don't want something to round. We don't want that decimal to go on forever, so we just write it as 112 pi. Now, if it told you to use pi as use 3.14 as pi, from there we would just take 112 times 3.14, and so then our answer becomes 351.68. Both of these are centimeters cubed for a unit. So again, if we're talking exact answers, we just leave it as we evaluate the numbers themselves, so 4 squared times 7, and then leave the pi where it is. If it tells us to use 3.14 as pi, then we take 112 times 3.14, and that will give us our final answer. So here's an extra example because you have one similar to this on your homework. And so we're wanting to find the volume. And so when I look at this, I notice that there is a hole or a cylinder cut out of the cylinder. And so when we're looking for the actual volume, we're looking for the volume of the big minus the volume that was cut out or taken away. So our height for both of these is going to be, I'm going to write it as 7.5 because it's 7.5. Now, we have two radiuses. We have the radius for our small, and a lot of times they'll call that little r. So right now we have diameters. So I need to find the radius of the small, I'm going to take 2.5 and divide by 2. Because we are given diameters and I need a radius. So 2.5 divided by 2 will give us 1.25. And then for our big cylinder, they normally call that radius a capital R when we're working with two different radii. And so we know that the diameter is 5, so now I need to take 5 and divide by 2, in which we will get 2.5 as our big radius. So now this is what I am going to do. I am going to find the volume of the big by doing pi capital R squared times our height. And then I'm going to subtract the volume of the small, which would be pi times the little r squared times the height. And so then that will give me what the volume of this whole shape is going to be. So I'm going to start with pi times 2.5 squared times 7.5. And I'm going to leave this in exact because that actually gives us fewer decimals and makes this a little bit easier to work with. So 2.5 squared times 7.5 will give us 46.875 pi. And then I need to find for my little one, so I'm going to do pi little r is 1.25 squared times our 7.5. And so we're going to take 1.25 and square that times 7.5, and I get 11.71. It's 87, so I'm going to make it 9 with the pi. So now from here, I am just going to take 46.875 pi minus 11.719 pi. And since they both have pi, I can subtract 46.875 minus 11.719. And I'm going to end up with 35.156 pi. So this would be my exact answer. And then if it said to use pi as 3.14, then the answer I would get would be approximately 110.39, and we're in inches cubed. And so, again, on this type of problem, we're going to take the big volume minus the small volume to get what is left. So that's kind of like trying to think of when you have those water bottles with the core that goes inside, we're subtracting the core out of the volume that we can put into our water bottle. And we will go through the rest of our notes in the next video.